So as I said, I'm going to talk about these two programs, the MSc in Biomedical Genomics and the MSc in Genomics Data Science. And really, they're designed to train people for this area, as I mentioned, precision medicine. And it's really about kind of giving people both, I suppose, the theoretical kind of foundational skills in statistics and programming, and probability, and then the applied skills in how to analyze this kind of genomic data that can be pulled into these kind of precision medicine approaches. So the two types of graduates that we target for the different programs are a little bit different. If you're coming from a life science background with a degree in biochemistry, micro, biotech, or biomedical science, you would apply typically for the entry to the MSc in Biomedical Genomics. And if you're coming from a more quantitative background, with background in skills in maths, stats, physics, computer science, or biomedical, computational, or electrical and electronic engineering, you would typically apply for the MSc in Genomics Data Science. And the reason that we would encourage people to apply for those different programs is that while the programs share an awful lot of the same content, they actually kind of diverge from the same fundamental program. There are some small differences that with modules that have been tailored to address gaps in specific backgrounds. So I'll talk a little bit about the modules on the next slide and explain that a little further. But generally, if you're applying to these programs, we expect a first class or good second class honors degree in one of the cognate disciplines. And the applicants are all individually assessed based on a combination of your transcripts, a CV, and a personal statement. And for anyone who would be thinking of applying, I would say that the personal statement is really an important aspect of the application that's not always done as well as we would hope. And really, the reason there's a focus on the personal statement is that if you're coming from a life science background and you're moving into this kind of interdisciplinary space, or if you're coming from a quantitative background and moving in to start applying these skills in a medical or biomedical domain, you really kind of have to sell us on what's the motivation for that. We have to get a good kind of sense that, if you're applying for biomedical genomics, that you understand that this course isn't the same as something like biomedical science or a master's in biotechnology, that it is really about being able to get hands-on and analyze this kind of genomic data. So that's kind of an important point for anyone who's thinking of applying. In terms of what you learn, we have what we would term core kind of genomics data science skills. So the probability models for genomics, statistical computing, and programming, genomics research methods, data analysis, and medical genomics, including cancer genomics. So everyone will take a combination of those. And then everyone has the option to take 3 optional modules in semester 2, and they would include things like data visualization, web and network science, bioinformatics, and applied and advanced immunology. And again, the options that would be available would be a little bit different. If you're coming from the quantitative background, optimization is an option. If you're coming from a life science background, we'd ask that you take a foundational program in Python programming. So again, the options that are available are kind of tailored to the background on the 2 programs. But bar those small minor differences, the class is taught as a single cohort. And that's a really important aspect, because we have people from a life science background who are kind of learning the stats and the coding, and people from a quantitative background who are learning about molecular biology. And really the way that they kind of lean on each other and learn from each other in this kind of peer learning group is a really important aspect of the program. So it also kind of serves to create a really nice kind of class dynamic. In terms of delivery, the program is a little bit different from your standard masters in that we have what we would call an accelerated kind of 6-week boot camp, where we have these kind of workshop style lectures. So what that means is, rather than taking, we'll say, a module in probability in week 1 and then seeing another one in week 2, you actually would take a concentrated week with an individual lecturer focusing on a particular topic. So you would generally see a week of statistics, a week of probability, a week of data analysis, and then back to a week of statistics, and so on. And the reason that we do that is that it's really important to get hands-on time in front of the computer, kind of learning these skills and applying them. And the way it works is that within an individual day, you would typically have a theoretical kind of lecture, then you would have a computational exercise, a practical, then there would be a tutorial, and then there would be an assessment. So you have this kind of every day where you've got this kind of learn about something, practice something, get some feedback on what you've practiced, do an assessment, and then a quick turnaround on feedback on that assessment as well. And we found that this really, it's a really intensive kind of process, but it really helps students to upskill very, very quickly in these different kind of computational and quantitative skills that we want them to learn. What we have then is, like the MSc in mathematics, we have an individual MSc project, and there's a few different components to this. So there's a 5,000 word literature review that students complete in semester 2. We don't have a standard kind of thesis submission. We actually moved away from a thesis submission to a manuscript submission. So we found that a lot of the projects that our students were working on were actually really high quality, and that by kind of posing them as this manuscript submission problem and having students submit in that format, that we actually ended up with students who, by the end of the program, were in a situation there with a little extra work and polish, were in a place where they could actually feasibly submit a manuscript for publication, which is I think an excellent kind of testament to both the quality of the work that the students do and the way that we've kind of designed the projects. The third component then of the project is that you give a presentation to the external examiner. So similar to the Masters in Mathematics, it's a 90 credit course. So 60 come from the talk component, and then the project itself is worth 30 credits. And you'll see here on the right an example of one of our manuscripts from, this is actually from 2 years ago, where one of our students actually traveled to the Sanger Institute to work in collaboration with a group there on single cell analysis. Unfortunately, this year, because of COVID, we didn't have students do any placements, but it is an option each year generally that we have places for 1 or 2 students on a competitive basis. So that's something to keep in mind as well. In terms of what students do afterwards, it's quite an interesting program in that people come onto it with different plans, and the skills that they develop will let them kind of change career quite effectively. So we do have life scientists who come onto the program and then basically choose to go back to a wet lab environment, but with additional skills in data analysis, and that kind of increases their employability. We do have similarly life scientists who come onto the program and really excel in the data analysis skills and go on to do more kind of bioinformatics and data science to take on those roles. And typically we find people working in places like Genomics Medicine Ireland, or Genuity as it's been renamed, Infor Labs, Biomage, the European Bioinformatics Institute, or in data science roles in both pharma and non-life science companies. So we have people who work as data scientists in Abbott and Novartis, and we also have people who've come from a life science background and actually used the quantitative training to flip careers. So we do have, for example, a student who took the program 2 years ago, who came from a life science background but now works essentially in software consulting and data analysis. So that's kind of where a lot of our graduates would go. 1 in 3 of our graduates, though, do go on to PhD research. So we have graduates across all of the institutions in Ireland. We have graduates at a number of institutions across Europe, and we have graduates in doctoral training programs in the US. I think 3 of our graduates are now working at the Icahn School of Medicine in New York. One of the more interesting, I think, recent developments for graduates here is the Centre for Research Training in Genomics Data Science. So this is a 13 million SFI funded centre that's led by NUIG that covers 5 other institutions in Ireland. So it's a multi-institutional doctoral training programme. And we have a really good success ratio for our MSc students. So so far about 8 or 9 of our MSc students have secured places on the Genomics Data Science PhD program and are currently in either their first or second year of the program. So that's certainly something to consider as well, because essentially the MSc program provides a really solid background in the kind of skills that the CRT is looking for. Lastly, just in terms of scholarships, there's a number of different scholarships available. Some of these are directed for EU students. So there's the NUIG postgraduate scholarships for EU students, which if you have a first class honours undergraduate degree, it gets you €1,500 either in fee reduction, or if you're on a SUSI grant, is essentially given to you. And for non-EU students, similarly, there's a €2,000 postgraduate merit scholarship. There's also a number of regional or country-specific scholarships, and I'd encourage you to look at the international students website for those. And lastly, there's a Government of Ireland scholarship, which this year is an individual stipend of €10,000 and a full fee waiver. And there's 60 of those awards being given out this year across all of the different IRIS institutions. So that's essentially my spiel for those two programs. I'll pause or stop the recording now and ask any questions that people may have.